man, I got to gush about Invincible, man. My God, ladies and gentlemen, by God, I must gush about Invincible. So here's the deal. If you, don't care about Invincible or you hate Invincible or whatever, you're either going to have to check out or deal with my ass, man, because I gotta go in on this. This was fucking cinema, okay? This was some peak entertainment, and Invincible itself is such an interesting show in its own right, but also in the way that fans have responded to it and the history that it has had. Classically, season 2, they fumbled. I mean, they made some serious mistakes in season 2. I think the structure and story of season 2 was not as good as season 1. I also think the animation took a hit. I also think the big weird break that they put in the middle of that season really hurt the show. And of course, it was 2.5 years after the original show came out. So a lot of L's. Okay? Invincible held a lot of L's in season 2. And there was a lot of questions going into season 3 as to whether or not this show would be able to recover, get its aura back, find a lot of its fan base again, and get back to winning. Because that first season really was something special. Okay. So I sat down this morning and I watched the finale of season 3. This is the Conquest episode. And, frankly, for leaks and rumors and stuff like that, we sort of knew Conquest was coming for a long, long time. There were a lot of signs. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, of course, voicing Conquest. Great choice. And this was set up in last week's episode where you have the Invincible War, and it ends on a cliffhanger as Conquest shows up. Just like in the comic books, after Invincible War, things are really bad. You think they can't get any worse. And guess what? They definitely can, because Invincible has to face down with the most powerful Viltrumite. I mean, I guess second most powerful. Thrag is technically the most powerful. But one of the most powerful Viltrumites that there is in Conquest. This is an iconic thing from the comics. Super big deal. The buildup was cool. I sat down, and I would say I had high expectations, but I don't know that I really, truly thought that the show would get back to form with some of the most iconic, crazy moments from season 1. I think between the first episode of season 1 and the last episode of season 1, there were you had this feeling, at least I did. I had this feeling like I was witnessing something truly peak, and it was electric. Like it felt electric, and I was on the edge of my seat, and I love that feeling. I think in some ways that's why nerds in general get into things. That's why we like being nerdy. We get a taste of something like this. I don't know what it was for you. I'd love to know. What was your gateway drug to juicy, awesome, nerdy shit? Was it Goku going Super Saiyan on Namek? All sorts of crazy moments and stuff that have happened from our favorite shows from the past, right? You get that hit, and it just feels so fucking peak, dude. And you're just completely absorbed into the story and into the moment. And that's, for me, that's really why I continue to be into all of these things. It's I'm chasing that high again and again and again. I'm chasing that feeling. And I didn't expect that feeling. I expected a good episode, really cool action, animation, etc. My God, this was one of the coolest episodes of television, one of the coolest nerdy things that I've sat down to witness that I've ever fucking seen. I didn't even know if it would hit the highs of the show from the past, and I feel like it exceeded that, and it's literally one of the coolest episodes of anything nerdy that I have seen maybe ever. And so I just wanted to say, dude, if you're on the fence, if you were an Invincible fan, but maybe have checked out, if you've never considered Invincible and maybe after some of the stuff that happened in season 2, you felt I didn't check it out. And look, it's falling off or whatever. I just want to say with my fucking chest, this is incredible. And I highly recommend that you check this out. I do think you need to watch the whole show. because the build-up and a lot of the character stuff that they cook, perhaps in some of the slow burn parts of the series, pay off in really big, important moments. And I want to talk more about that, too, because, dude, there's just a lesson here. I think a lesson for Marvel, a lesson for a lot of other, like, Invincible's doing some stuff that other entertainment is not. And it's worth discussing that, right? But holy shit, the highest recommendation I can possibly give, I am giving that shit. Please go watch Invincible. And my God, it is literally worth it just to build up to this episode with Conquest. This was some fucking incredible stuff. Why is it so good? Without getting into spoilers, why is it so good? Well, number one, it has brutal action that is actually animated really, really well. Now, this was kind of a concern. This is part of the reason why I went into this episode not necessarily having the highest possible expectations, because the animation is still a weaker point of Invincible overall. And we can talk about that more in a little bit, too, because I still think they need to adjust this moving forward. But, you know, the copium within the fandom, guys, was that this episode and the Invincible War episode would look way better than most of season 2 because obviously they're saving their resources. They know that's what's important, and they really put a lot of effort and they put expenses into that, right? You've heard this before, right? Sometimes Game of Thrones did this, where the budget was saved for a big battle in a season, whether it's like the Battle of the Bastards or Hardhome or whatever, right? So you could see the logic there. I was very skeptic of that being the case. I was like, yeah, I don't know. Because even Invincible War episode, to me, doesn't have great animation. It's great. It's an incredible episode of television, but the animation's still weak. But, dude, I think people might have been right. Because this Conquest episode has incredible animation. Not like throughout the whole thing. There's still a little wonkiness here and there, whatever. But to me, this was the most cohesive an energetic feeling episode all season. There's a fluidity to certain sequences and the blood and the gore that's just so fucking beautiful and immersive. Oh man, it's really good. It's really good, chat. It's really fucking good, okay? So, wow. That was great. And the brutality, man, there is really something to be said. Like for me, I think Invincible does this a little bit better than even The Boys. It's a different strokes for different folks sort of situation. But when it comes to gore and violence, I feel like The Boys uses it a little bit like Deadpool uses jokes. It's shotgunned all over the place. It's just kind of constant, and it loses some of its oomph. And a lot of it just feels kind of grotesque, and, you know, they're just doing it for the sake of doing it. But in Invincible, this violence and the absolute fucking brutality of Conquest is just so poignantly felt. It's so useful. And it doesn't feel gimmicky. It feels like a truly earned moment where the stakes are amplified to like 1,000 because of how brutally fucking violent this situation is. And it just works really well. So I would say like why is this such a peak episode? The brutality, the violence, and credit where credit is due, the animation and the violence was really well handled. The second thing I have in my notes, perfect pacing. How often do you hear me say that? You know, the truth is, I'm kind of a tough critic in some ways. Sometimes I can just accept a movie or project for what it is and just have fun with it, like Venom 3. But a lot of the time, I'm a really harsh critic of a lot of this stuff, you know? And one thing I love is when this genre and nerdy stuff in general can basically scratch both of my itches. Like the itch for super fun, cool, nerdy stuff that's like bombastic and fun, but also like really well done craftsmanship of the thing, whether it's a show, movie, animation, or whatever. Like peak is peak, and we appreciate peak. You know, part of the reason why I love this week's Daredevil episode is because I think it's peak, dude. I think that writing is really good. It's maybe not flawless, but it's really good and layered and meta-contextual and just like, dude, I really liked this week's Daredevil episode too. And part of the reason I could let go of maybe the lack of action, it's a pretty slow burn episode, is because I was so immersed by what the episode was doing, how it was executing. So I really appreciate that. I got to tell you, this episode of Invincible, the finale here, was masterfully paced. Masterfully paced. The best way I could describe it is this was literally paced the way a lot of us fans of old Dragon Ball in the 90s, I think in our brains, we think Dragon Ball was paced this well, and it definitely wasn't. But we just think it was. This is like that make-believe Mandela effect nostalgia filter that we put on Dragon Ball, and we're like, oh yeah, that shit was peak, like the way that it worked. No, this was like actually like that. The highs and the lows of the battle itself, incredible. The stakes of the entire Earth and how the other characters were responding to it all, epic as hell. The way that the character moments and the love and connection that the actual characters have is pulled apart and used against them, brilliant. It leads to the ending of this fight sequence and what happens. Again, I don't want to go into spoilers, but like, dude, there's a couple of things that happen that are truly shocking and kind of put you in the perspective of like, oh no, like that's, how are they going to get back from that? And yet they do, and it feels right. It doesn't feel like Deus Ex Machina, completely out of nowhere or whatever. Like, it actually feels like a natural continuation of several different things that have been going on in the story. It's great. It's great. Dude, it's really good, Chad. It's really fucking good, man. Oh my God, it's really good. The pacing's really good, So masterful pacing on that episode. I'm going to watch this goddamn thing again. Okay? I'm going to watch this goddamn thing again. Let's see here. What else? What else do I have in here? Oh, yeah. The payoffs were so good and so emotional. So here's something I got to say. And I definitely think there's something to this that has made Invincible has the sauce, man. It has the juice. And I think if you're Marvel or if you're just somebody else out there that's like, what's going on here that has people so excited, or what's working here? Man, one of the things that Kirkman does really well, and I think you got to give a lot of credit to Kirkman and whoever this team is that is doing the adaptation for the show, because they're adding some stuff, they're changing some stuff, and ultimately it's still hitting a lot of the notes from the comic, but maybe even elevating certain parts of that story, right? It's great. But the point is, man, if you think about The Walking Dead, which is Kirkman's other massive property, The Walking Dead, despite being set in a zombie apocalypse world, is not actually about the zombies. And the heart of that story is really about the humans and how they're dealing with the collapse of the world. And it's this like really human story. It's like, it's pretty interesting, right? That was a big part of the juice of The Walking Dead. Well, that's also what's going on in Invincible. Now, I think the recipe is different with Invincible because the Viltrumite stuff and the heroic stuff is a lot more front and center than even the zombies were in Walking Dead. So it's not like a one-to-one, but the heart of the book is the characters and how they're dealing with all of the crazy bombastic stuff that's going on, man. And so even though sometimes this show can feel a little slow burn and feel a little weird because they're just talking about their feelings like a lot, like there's a lot of that. And sometimes it does feel like it's a little much for me. But it ultimately pays off, man. Like it really does work. And it's clear that that was a part of cooking. That's how it was cooked. You sort of live through these connections and all these things. So then when the epic crazy shit's going down and the world's falling all around us, the little moments, as that's happening in a aggressively paced episode, really pay off and add the oomph to the whole thing. And man, they really got something with this book. I mean, look, there's a lot of Invincible fans out there that could hear what I'm saying right now, and they're like, yeah, dude, like obviously that's why we love it. Everybody knows this, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing is, the show itself I truly feel, especially in season 2, did not handle that balance super well. And, you know, on top of some other mistakes and some other things that happened, it felt like Invincible like really wasn't quite what it could be. That was like my thing with season 2, right? And the overall feeling and take of season 3 for me is like, bro, they did it. Like, they actually got this thing sorted out. They got their aura back. This is crazy. Thanks for watching. And if you like this clip, smash a like on the actual video and subscribe to this channel. That way more of these clips get into your feed. I've also linked the full episode below if you want to check out the entire thing, including the Q&A we do with fans. You can also watch this show live. We do it live Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And you can also find all of my content, including the videos I put on my main YouTube channel, on the podcast feed.